with Warhammer 40k Darktide coming in just a few months' time, I thought I would make a video going through some of the main enemies that we will be facing in the game, the Mobian 6th. So today, I will be going through their origins, their role in the game, and what we can expect from this group of big bad boys. Like my previous video on Warhammer, this is an introduction to them as a group of enemies, and as the game has not come out at this stage, I don't have every single story aspect, but we can get a reasonable amount of insight into who and what they are. In Darktide, we can see quite clearly that there are a wide range of enemies, and while the Mobian 6th make up a lot of them, not every skull that you break in the game belongs to them. You see, a fair amount of the enemies in the game appear to be civilians that have been taken over by chaos, but this isn't the same as being a member of the Mobian 6th. The name itself subtly hints it, but they are actually a regiment of the Imperial Guard that has turned traitor. These scary and spooky boys are not just civilians, but trained members of the Imperial Army that is supposed to be guarding planets just like Tertium against the worst the galaxy has to offer. So, what on earth happened to them, and why are they like this now?
They were once men, one by one falling into darkness. Now they are slaves to his will.
Sorry, different franchise, but the meaning is still the same. In Darktide, the Mobian 6th were once part of the Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum if you want to be particularly fancy. So, they aren't space marines or super soldiers, they aren't anyone special, they were regular humans that were conscripted into the army to protect their home planet and the wider galaxy. They were raised, for the most part, on Atoma Prime itself, the planet where Darktide actually takes place. Now, being a member of the Imperial Guard is actually reasonably common in the Warhammer 40k universe, because the universe is at constant war, so you need troops to feed into the meat grinder. With the ridiculous number of planets that humanity controls, they are very simply given a requirement. If you want to be a member of the whole human race and we won't call you a traitor, then you have to donate a certain amount of resources or manpower every so often. It's called their Imperial Tide. It's essentially what they need to donate to the whole human race so that everyone can still survive. And in a lot of cases, it's a certain requirement of troops for the army. So essentially, a lot of citizens from Atoma Prime are being conscripted to join the Imperial Guard, and they will then become a regiment of the Mobian sector. This is where we get the name the Mobian 6th, but getting back to their story. After being conscripted, they were sent on many different tours in the Fringe War, a campaign that has carried on for many years at the edge of the Mobian domain. There have been many different Mobian regiments, but the 6th were the most famous, decorated, and celebrated. In fact, on Atoma Prime, their homeworld, they were heroes, tough as nails, you know, the kind of soldiers that eat raw porridge and wrestle bears. Okay, that's not true, but you get the picture. They bravely defended the Mobian domain for many years, ensuring that it wasn't lost or invaded. They also fought in disputed territories at the border of their sector, and these are wild worlds that are outside of the Imperium's reach. These are just an absolute cocktail of alien or xeno threats. To the citizens of Atoma, they actually don't really know much about their own sector. It's all a bit of a mystery. They don't realize just how close they live to the horrors of the galaxy, and they just think that it's the Darktide. It's what they call a boogeyman threat that they don't actually think is real. But the reality is that it's a very real threat that must be kept at bay. As I have said before, the galaxy of Warhammer 40k is not a friendly place. There are many horrors outside who want nothing more than to extinguish the flame of human civilization. Out on the death worlds of the Fringe, the Mobian 6th were sent to charge into the meat grinder of war and face these unspeakable dangers. They learned that the Darktide, the boogeyman in the closet, is real, but somehow, through some kind of miracle or sheer willpower and grit, they were able to learn how to fight back against the horrors of the galaxy. Some of their soldiers were broken by the experience, their minds shattered, their bodies thrown apart and disintegrated or mutilated. Some were made bitter and resentful that the horrifying combat that they experience is unknown to them and all of their fellow citizens back home. This is because the Imperial Administratum, the government of mankind basically, tends to keep all these details quiet to avoid general panic. There might be a news broadcast from time to time about great victories, but the rest of the story is buried along with the bodies of the dead, and unfortunately, that is the reality of the Warhammer 40k universe. At the end of the day, the regiments of the Imperial Guard, like the Mobian 6th, end up suffering a huge amount because of it. I mean, sure, some troopers are going to serve brilliantly and show extreme bravery to be able to hold the goddamn line. But in the case of the Mobian 6th, they actually fell prey to the insidious touch of the Darktide. They encountered the evil effects of the warp, and it changed them. They became, literally, in many cases, the very thing that they were fighting against. So, over time, the entire regiment became corrupted by the trauma of their experiences and the polluting effects of the warp. The Guardians of Atoma themselves have turned, and in vengeance and hatred on the people that they guard and the hive that raised them. They have been seduced by the dark powers, and they have come home. Unfortunately, they aren't stopping by to say g'day and have a beer. Whatever twisted beliefs they seem to have, they want to share them with the rest of Atoma Prime, and they truly believe that they have seen the light, and in some kind of messed up way, they think that it's the good thing to do. Somehow, nobody saw their uniforms and said, "Are we the bad guys here?" So, essentially, they were one of the bright hopes of the Imperial Guard, a respected and well-trained force that could be relied on to save the day. However, over many years, they were stretched too far, pushed too far, and now they have gone over the edge, and they want to drag the whole Imperium down with them. What makes them so deadly is the fact that they have training, they have full military gear, they have a cave troll, I mean Ogrins. You get the picture. They have troops who excel at close range and hand-to-hand combat, they have stormtroopers, snipers, flamethrowers, demolition units, heavy weapon squads. They got everything that you would need in an armed unit to take down a planet, and that's exactly what they are planning on doing. It's unclear if one particular Chaos God has been the cause of their corruption, but we can definitely see a lot of influence from Nurgle in some of their troops. I suppose when the game releases we will probably learn firsthand just how scary the Darktide can be. But that's basically everything we know about the Mobian 6th. So if you do want to see more of this and you do want more Warhammer content, then make sure you leave a like, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. This is a lot of unexplored territory for me on how to make good Warhammer videos, so a bit of it is kind of seeing how I go, but if you do have any feedback, feel free to put it down in the comment section below. That's probably also a good point to call it for today. So, I will see you all on the next one. I've been Kiv, and I'm out.